to be a president that makes you proud. But more than that, what does it mean in this caucus to all of you? If we want to see a change.
Nikki Haley's rise in Iowa, momentum in New Hampshire could upend Donald Trump's legal strategy. Let us explain. Today he came to D.C. for his lawyers to argue a motion on presidential immunity. And things, as happens occasionally with Trump, got a little wild, including this exchange between one of the judges and Trump's lawyer.
Could a president who ordered SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival who was not impeached, would he be subject to criminal prosecution?
If he were impeached and convicted first. And
so your answer is no.
My answer is qualified yes.
Trump's campaign strategy to run up the delegate count and delay criminal cases until he is the presumptive nominee could change things both legally and politically. That only works if he is the presumptive nominee. Nikki Haley is now within single digits in New Hampshire. She's peaking at exactly the right time. Trump wants to force the Supreme Court to decide if they're going to allow the criminal prosecution of the presumptive nominee, and if the Department of Justice will continue the prosecution of the presumptive nominee. That's his best chance. If Haley wins New Hampshire, there's a month where Trump isn't the presumptive nominee, and CNN loves it.
The political and legal calendar, if you look at it over the course of the next few months,
it hurts your eyes.
It looks like the weekend sports calendar in the Mattingly household.
The morning is hurting your eyes right now.
Ubering my children around.
Here now, former Deputy Assistant Attorney General under George W. Bush, Tom Dupree. He helped the last time the Supreme Court decided our president back in 2000. Let's take the mocking aside for a moment. Is it possible, really, to take the political side of this and the legal side of this and pull them apart?
I don't see how you can disentangle the politics from the law here, Leland. This is a campaign that really is unique in American history, where so much of the day-to-day reporting on the campaign, the events that are driving voter perceptions, the candidate's behavior, is being determined by what's going on in a courtroom. Today, it was a federal court of appeals here in Washington, D.C. Tomorrow, it may be the Supreme Court, but there is no way that you can separate the political from the legal in this environment.
And President Trump campaigns on it, right? A big part of his presidential campaign is that he is being prosecuted, in his words, persecuted by the Biden administration. In the end, we know at least part of this is going to go to the Supreme Court because they've already said they're going to hear arguments on the Colorado case where he's not going to be on the ballot unless they overturn the Colorado Supreme Court. He's eventually, a number of these issues, presidential immunity, are going to get to the Supreme Court. Does the court, in that case, only decide the law, or must they also decide the politics?
Well, there, too, it's hard, I think, for the Supreme Court to separate the two. They will decide it on the law. I think the justices, all of them, liberal, conservative, will decide these cases based on what they think the Constitution and the law require. That said, judges are human. Justices are human, and they're not immune from paying attention to the political environment, the consequences of their decision. And I think there's, frankly, a lot of historical memory on the court, going back to Bush versus Gore, and that any time the court gets involved in politics, which they don't like to do, they realize they pay a little bit of an institutional price, because there are going to be people out there who look whichever way they go who are going to be dissatisfied with the decision and say there's politics at work here.
I'll flip that around, though, and you think about the makeup of the court. How much do they, though, want to ensure that the justice system stays the justice system, the political system stays the political system, and that the political system can't be used, the justice system can't be used by politicians of either side?
Right. And that is going to be first and foremost. It'll be in the foreground of whatever they decide, is basically to say that, look, disputes like this, politically driven disputes, need to be decided in the polling place, election halls, that sort of thing, not in courts of law. But unfortunately, I think events have put us in a place where it's impossible for the Supreme Court to completely turn these cases away and say we're not going to have a role in it. They're being dragged into this almost against their will. And I think one very interesting test will be whether Chief Justice Roberts can get a lot of the more liberal justices and the conservative justices to vote together, to speak unanimously, so you don't have one of those fractured, politically driven decisions that will, again, just corrode a lot of people's faith.
You think about it, if it's 9-0, that says something way different than if it's 6-3
absolutely,
or 5-4.
Absolutely.
You think about all of Donald Trump's criminal indictments, election interference, classified documents case, the Fulton County case in Georgia, some big news on that today. We'll be following it. Hush money, falsifying business records case. Okay, these all begin and can occur after he would be if things go his way, the presumptive nominee. Does that change his arguments?
I think it changes his arguments a bit in that he would have stronger ground for making the arguments he's already been making, that this is all politically driven. In other words, if he's just one of many candidates, that's one thing. But if he is the nominee or even the presumptive nominee, those arguments would carry more force. Maybe not in a court of law, but certainly in the court of public opinion. Of course, his ultimate endgame here is if he can delay things long enough and he wins the election, then the game is completely changed, because at least as far as the federal prosecutions go on day one of a new Trump presidency, he can dismiss all those claims against him.
And conceivably, the Supreme Court could say, we're going to wait on all of this until the election. That is within their power.
They sure could. Yeah, they could delay a lot of these things. And that's going to be another interesting thing to keep an eye on, is how quickly they decide it.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Or if they're able to push it off so they don't have to.
Exactly.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.